Onimusha's notable historical figures are many, each playing a vital part in the franchise's overarching story, while also keeping loosely to their historically accurate lives, including their exploits and inevitably their ends. Obviously, the most significant historical figure in this case would be the infamous Nobunaga Oda, who is used quite often in games based on feudal Japan as a main antagonist. Here, his significance begins by making a pact with the Genma after his initial death in Okehazama and subsequent revival at the hands of Guildenstern. This set in motion a chain of events that made Nobunaga the most recognisable character in the entire series next to Samanosuke, playing a major role in almost all of the games. So how exactly would events have unfolded if he decided to refuse the Genma's deal? Guildenstern only resurrected him on the off chance that he would choose to serve him, so there was really nothing stopping him from deciding otherwise. What if Nobunaga chose not to accept any Genma power? Following the Battle of Okehazama and the death of both Nobunaga and Yoshimoto Imagawa, Guildenstern managed to retrieve Oda's corpse and managed to revive him, expecting the ambitious warlord to make a deal with them, trading his service for their power. Once Nobunaga was raised and he learned of his fate, Nobunaga proved to be surprisingly proud, so much so that he didn't believe it necessary to rely on the Genma in order to complete his conquest of Japan, and decided to refuse the Genma's offer. Naturally, this angered both Guildenstern and Fortinbras, who decided to kill him again in retaliation, insulted at Nobunaga's rejection of their power. This, however, caused an unexpected power vacuum within the Oda clan. Word of Nobunaga's second death at the hands of the Genma reached the clan, and resulted in a desperate meeting to decide the clan's heir. Soon, thanks in no small part to the likes of Tokichiro's extremely vocal support, it was decided that Nobunaga's heir could only be Nobutada Oda, the late warlord's 3-year-old son. However, due to his age, a temporary leader would be needed. It was eventually decided that Nobunaga's half-brother, Nobuhiro Oda, would serve as the de facto leader of the Oda clan until Nobutada came of age. However, many other members of the clan constantly looked down on him, labelling him an illegitimate son of their father, Nobuhide. Nobuhiro slowly began to grow jaded and bitter, and slowly decides that he no longer wants to let Nobutada take his place as head of the clan. Samanosuke and Kaede return to Japan and decide against rejoining the Saito clan, though due to the lack of Genma involvement here, at least for now, Princess Yuki and Samanosuke end up keeping occasional contact, with him sometimes visiting to tell stories of his overseas travel, something that she is fascinated by. This also means that he and Kaede become acquainted with Yumimaru, having been adopted by Yuki at this point, and they enjoy a significantly better relationship before the events of Warlords. This continues for the next few years, meaning that Yoshitatsu Saito dies in 1561 before the Genma become involved in events, leaving Tatsuoki Saito to become the head of the Saito family. As for the Oda clan, growing tensions eventually become evident between the two sides. Loyalists of Nobutada, including Tokichiro, maintain that he is to become the next heir, while Nobuhiro and his supporters begin asserting that he remain in charge, and in 1565, this tension boils over as Nobuhiro begins a hostile takeover of the entire clan by making contact with the Genma and offering his loyalty to them in exchange for the power necessary to subjugate the clan and eventually the country under his rule. Unbeknownst to him, Tokichiro had also decided to make contact with the Genma, offering them the loyalty of his faction of the clan in exchange for the power necessary to depose Nobuhiro and guarantee Nobutada's rightful position as head of the clan when he comes of age. As Nobuhiro contacts them first, the Genma begin the preparations for the Dark Ceremony, and the events of Warlords essentially begin 5 years late, with the Genma kidnapping Yuki in the same manner as normal. This, of course, leads to Samanosuke and Kaede setting out to save her, Samanosuke becoming an Oni warrior and defeating Osric and Reynaldo. Inside the castle keep, he still finds Tokichiro attempting to kidnap Yumemaru, though since the boy is 16 years old by now, finds it very difficult to restrain him, and instead of biting his hand, he breaks Tokichiro's grip and lands a heavy punch to his stomach before fleeing, leaving him winded before Samanosuke prevents him from trying to chase the teenager. His deal with the Genma to overthrow Nobuhiro had him tasked by them to kidnap Yumemaru in order to make Yuki's blood more delicious through his sacrifice. Succeeding will have them favour him and Nobutada over Nobuhiro, and they would be able to complete the ceremony instead. Another term of this agreement was to have Nobutada drink the blood as well as Tokichiro, since he was to be the true leader in the years to come. After recognising Samanosuke, he introduces himself as a servant of Nobutada, the true heir of the Oda clan, as well as a servant of the late Nobunaga's will. He then asks the Oni to join the true Oda clan, labelling Nobuhiro a pretender. Samanosuke refuses regardless, and Tokichiro leaves, slightly more disappointed than normal, but still promises not to give up. He is later intercepted by Kaede with the teenager in tow, this time being far more open and less aggressive with them due to already knowing them for a good 4 to 5 years. He still remains clueless as to why Tokichiro is after him, and Samanosuke asks Kaede to take him to a safe place, but Yumemaru refuses to cooperate and runs off, desperate to save Yuki, with Kaede in pursuit. Samanosuke and Kaede meet up later to report that before she could catch up to him, a Genma managed to grab him and escape. They get through the many traps and split up in search of him. Once Samanosuke reaches the upper floors, he finds the Three Eyes responsible for kidnapping Yumemaru, who did so thanks to a tip-off from Tokichiro, who intercepts Samanosuke and claims that Nobutada would rule the world with the Genma. Samanosuke, on top of chastising his willingness to condemn innocents to die, also calls out his cruelty to Nobutada, forcing a child to make a pact with the Genma. Tokichiro simply justifies it as the strong preying on the weak, so Nobutada must be as strong as possible, and is forced to flee after he tells Samanosuke of the Dark Ceremony and Samanosuke takes a swing at him. Events line back up for more or less the rest of Warlords now, with small changes here and there. Yumemaru is still saved after Samanosuke defeats Marcellus, and after Nui appears, heads into the basement only to be met by Tokichiro again, though he is far more frustrated this time, accusing Samanosuke of guaranteeing Nobuhiro's leadership of the Oda clan by rescuing Yumemaru from him for a second time. Instead of asking him to join the Oda clan, he simply says that he has only one more chance to stay in the Genma's good graces, and immediately activates the Genma structure to incapacitate the Oni. At the same time, as he reveals that Yumemaru is his this time, Stilado finds Kaede and knocks her out like normal, while Nui attempts to restrain Yumemaru, though he is once again a lot more rowdy, and Stilado is forced to immediately knock him out too. From here, the game returns to normal until Fortinbras's defeat, with Nobuhiro appearing within the demon world instead of Nobunaga, though he is significantly less calm and makes a brief attempt at Samanosuke's life, but is forced to flee as the demon world crumbles. As he and Samanosuke escape, Nobuhiro loses sight of the Oni before he can make another attempt to kill him. Despite his failure to complete his pact with the Genma, he, like Nobunaga, takes advantage of the power vacuum within the Genma to assert himself as the new Genma Lord. With him rising to power over them, he still attacks Tatsuoki Saito in 1567, killing him and burning the Inabayama castle. This success garnered respect among the Genma, and they accepted him as their new lord, and the castle is renamed Gifu like normal. Yuki and Yumemaru's escape play out the same. Seeing the respect he is receiving from the Genma rather than much of the Oda clan, Nobuhiro decides to give his supporters an ultimatum. allow themselves to serve by converting into Genma, or he would kill them, seeing more value in Genma loyalty rather than human. This causes some to become disillusioned and attempt to flee, and while some were successful, many were stopped and slaughtered. The survivors rejoin Tokichiro's faction and begin supporting Nobutada. Those who remained are successfully converted, and Nobuhiro, now practically drunk on his new Genma power, officially separates from the Oda clan, converting his faction into the Hero clan. As the years continue, Nobuhiro prepares to conquer the country, while Nobutada is continually raised by Tokichiro as the true heir of the Oda clan, being fed constant promises that the power of the Genma will help him destroy his illegitimate uncle. In reality, Nobutada, 16 years old by 1573, has become disillusioned with both his uncle and the Oda clan, seeing that the Genma have played their ambitions and turned them into monsters in their own right, growing a deep hatred for the Genma. By now, Nobuhiro takes on Nobunaga's role entirely throughout the rest of the series, attacking the Yagyu village due to the Yagyu's connection with the Oni, leading to Jubei's quest for revenge. Nobuhiro makes the same plans to attack Odani Castle and Saiga village, leading to Oichi and Magoichi to set out against him. While only a half-sibling, Oichi still takes on the identity of Oyu to hide her identity from him. Things remain the same for a while now, at least until Jubei finds Oyu being accosted by Tokichiro in Gifu Castle, though this time accompanied by 2 human Oda soldiers, and this time asks her to join the true Oda clan who oppose Nobuhiro, and that together they could possibly stop him from attacking Odani Castle. While slightly tempted, Oyu doesn't trust Tokichiro and refuses, causing him to become frustrated and push even further, forcing Jubei to intervene. Tokichiro and his men express shock that he survived his village's massacre, which causes Jubei to briefly become enraged, accusing the Oda clan of the attack, only to be refuted by Tokichiro, who claims that the newly named Hero clan is responsible at the order of Nobuhiro, and asks Jubei to join him also, but Jubei is just as suspect, causing Tokichiro to deem them both a lost cause and orders his men to kill them. Jubei and Oyu are forced to fight back, and with Jubei's skill in particular, the soldiers are quickly defeated, forcing Tokichiro to flee as Genma appear, attracted by the commotion. Jubei orders Oyu to flee and he dispatches them. Events go back to normal for a while following Jubei's first meeting with Gugen Dantes, and after returning to Imasho and meeting Jujudoma, who this time is enamored by Nobuhiro, Jubei chases her back to the Yagyu village only to arrive too late to stop her from killing Takajo. Jubei reaches the foggy forest, defeats Jujudoma, and reaches the Oni sacred place, where he is beaten by Dantes again and saved by Oyu, finding for him the sacred flute while he recovers. Things don't really change now until Tokichiro is found again trying to restrain Oyu, trying to force her to siding with her nephew. But after Jubei intervenes, he furiously activates the trapdoor and this time immediately attempts to detonate it, not giving them any time for Oyu to tell Jubei her real name. The trap backfires regardless, and Oyu decides against telling him for now. After Jubei defeats Gugen Dantes and uses the Respect Orb to awaken the Genbu, Tokichiro hijacks the battleship like usual, but claims that he plans to use it to destroy Nobuhiro's forces before they reach Odani Castle, shouting that Oyu should be thanking him as he pilots it away with his own soldiers. Jubei and Oyu reach it and Jubei confronts Tokichiro, cutting down his forces as they attempt to kill him, and Tokichiro flees like usual before Jubei chases him down. As Jubei catches him, he begins furiously ranting about his constant failures to prevent Nobuhiro's seizure of power from Nobunaga's true heir, blaming both Jubei and Semenosuke for his failures. But Jubei calls out his own cruelty and ambition, deeming him no better than Nobuhiro due to his lack of care for collateral damage. Tokichiro throws his sword and flees like normal, shouting that Jubei has doomed Odani Castle as one last jab at the Oni. As if only to further spite Tokichiro, Jubei still works out how to fire the main weapons and Nobuhiro's army is devastated. Thanks to Tokichiro, the ship begins to malfunction and the two crash it into Gifu Castle, with OU falling back into the wreckage. Like normal, Jubei infiltrates the Genma structure, retrieves the final orb from Ginkenfat's, and says a final farewell to OU, who finally reveals her identity as Oichi to him. After explaining herself, Jubei is only further convinced that as Nobuhiro's half-sister, she can't get involved, and he says goodbye before facing down and defeating Nobuhiro. Events here line up almost identically for a while, with Kaede reuniting with Samanosuke, who by now, even with 5 less years than before, still manages to gain control of his Onimusha power in time. As a result, the events of Blade Warriors unfold identically, with Samanosuke and Jubei allying in order to defeat Nobuhiro after Guildenstern resurrects him. Following Blade Warriors in late 1573, Guildenstern resurrects him again, and he resumes his plans to conquer Japan. By this time, Tokichiro had changed his name to Hideyoshi Hashiba, and after spending time replenishing numbers of the Oda clan, began waging war against the Hiro clan, personally partaking in multiple skirmishes across the country. This conflict soon came to be known over the subsequent years as the Oda Civil War. By this time, however, Nobutada, now resentful against every possible reference of his family, including his late father, who he began to also blame for this new war in his name, begins planning an escape of the clan. As for Hideyoshi, after years of leading the Oda clan against the Hiro clan, the majority of its members begin seeing Nobutada as a mere figurehead, becoming more personally loyal to Hideyoshi after leading the clan for over a decade, and proving his abilities as a capable and respectable leader. This only further played into Nobutada's hands, however, who quickly witnessed their extensive loyalty to Hideyoshi, and used his newfound authority to officially name him, at least publicly, his most trusted general, often sending Hideyoshi into battles with a large bulk of their forces. While their forces were locked in their many battles, Nobutada would build a secret group consisting of his loyalists, and begin drawing up plans and strategies for their inevitable escape from the clan's territory in Owari province. Unfortunately, throughout the Civil War, Samanosuke and Kaede, now agents of Mitsuhide, found themselves getting dragged in during their own fight against the Genma, and Hideyoshi personally ordered the death of both of them as well as Nobuhiro, and during one of these skirmishes, they are caught in a battle involving Garganto, leading to the same death of Kaede as normal. Eventually, Nobutada, still playing along with Hideyoshi's bloodthirsty call for the death of the Hiro clan, orders Hideyoshi to take a massive garrison of forces to another skirmish against Nobuhiro, which Hideyoshi accepts without question, still remaining loyal to whom he believed was Nobunaga's true heir. Once the main bulk of their forces had left for battle, Nobutada and his trusted allies executed their plan, killing the guards that attempted to stop them from leaving and successfully escape the Oda clan. With his newfound freedom, he begins to seek out Samanosuke, remembering his name due to Hideyoshi's many angry rants against the Oni, which eventually brings him into contact with Mitsuhide, who is currently planning a rebellion of his own against Nobuhiro. While highly suspicious at first, Mitsuhide is left stunned when Nobutada requests to join him against his uncle as well as the Oda clan, making it clear that he wants nothing to do with either of them anymore. Samanosuke soon hears about this and meets Nobutada himself, seeing his sincerity and accepting him as an ally. Nobutada integrates his own forces into Mitsuhide's ranks and begins personally accompanying Samanosuke on missions, slowly learning more and more about him, his Oni power, and the Oni themselves. While he initially sees them in a similar light to the Genma, his opinion slowly changes as he witnesses Samanosuke's many acts of kindness, usually in the form of rescuing innocent people from danger, be it bandits or Genma. Realizing that the Oni fight for humanity, Nobutada becomes an outspoken Oni supporter, spending the next few years working with Samanosuke to protect as many people as he can from the Genma, learning from Samanosuke's skill to grow his own. As for Nobuhiro himself, he takes on the same role as Nobunaga in Demon Siege, including eventually demanding Guildenstern to find a way to spread his influence across time, meaning the time folder is still constructed like normal. The likes of Vega Donna also follows the same role here, simply marrying Nobuhiro as opposed to Nobunaga. Given that Nobuhiro is already a little more forceful than Nobunaga due to his already existing hatred towards Nobutada and Hideyoshi, it would likely be even easier for him to catch Vega's attention, so her role would remain unchanged. Samanosuke quickly starts confidently relying on Nobutada during missions, and the Oni take notice of this as well, and with Samanosuke supporting the decision, Nobunaga Oda is made an Oni warrior. By the time Mitsuhide puts his plans of rebellion into motion, Nobutada gains ownership of his own Oni weapon, a Western-style broadsword of ice named Hyoketsu. This eventually means that Nobutada accompanies Samanosuke as they assault the Genma tank and face off against Garganto. And while Garganto demands to face Samanosuke alone, Nobutada is left to deal with the other two Genma, which he succeeds. Nobutada joins the fight as Samanosuke gains distance to land on Garganto's pod, leading to Nobutada attacking Garganto to prevent him from throwing his sword to stop Samanosuke. The end result is the same regardless, and they both jump from the tank, with Samanosuke using Shippu to soften the fall for them both. After getting caught in the tank's explosion, the two Oni and Garganto are the only ones left alive, but with Kaede's murder still on his mind, Samanosuke asks Nobutada to step back, and like usual, he transforms into his Oni form to overpower the Genma warrior, with Samanosuke keeping in front of Nobutada to shield him from the explosion that resulted from Garganto's death. With the Genma reinforcements dealt with, the two Oni meet Mitsuhide at Honnouji Temple, and both receive new chainmail armor as a reward, rather than just Samanosuke. Mitsuhide begins the attack, and the Oni blitz their way into the temple, with Nobutada finally meeting his half-uncle in person for the first time. Contrasting Nobunaga's confidence, Nobuhiro reacts to his nephew's presence with anger, demanding that Ranmaru immediately kill him, blaming him specifically for his struggles to take over the Oda clan and conquer Japan. By this time, Nobutada had spent the last few years alongside Samanosuke, honing his skills and getting used to his Oni powers, and as a result, Nobutada faced Ranmaru alone, only to cut him down with little effort, similar to Samanosuke's canon victory. Nobuhiro grows enraged, labelling Nobutada the embodiment of Nobunaga's failures, and immediately attacks in a rage, catching the two Oni off guard and separating them. Nobutada is knocked down while Samanosuke manages to move in closer to directly fight Nobuhiro, but is quickly incapacitated, leaving Nobuhiro to shift his focus to his nephew, aggressively attacking and overpowering him. As Samanosuke regains consciousness, he looks over to see Nobuhiro standing over Nobutada, just as the warlord drives his sword into Nobutada's chest, killing him. Samanosuke's cries are drowned out by Nobuhiro's sadistic laughter, elated that he has finally ended his greatest enemy, using his magic to incinerate his corpse. Samanosuke retaliates, but is quickly knocked back down by Nobuhiro's dark magic. But as Nobuhiro tries to finish him off, a time fold appears and takes Samanosuke to the future. With Samanosuke being the only one still alive to be sent to the future, the events of his side of the game remain pretty much identical, while Jacques' side has a few more changes due to Nobutada's appearance. In Mount Hiei, Jacques finds Nobutada already fighting the Genma, with Samanosuke soon dropping from the roof to join him. Jacques still aggressively recognises Samanosuke, but Nobutada does his best to mediate before Akko intervenes, and the three agree to work together against the Genma. though Jacques becomes suspicious of Nobutada after discovering his relation to Nobuhiro. Samanosuke assures him that Nobutada is trustworthy, but Jacques remains quietly on edge. Regardless, the three split up upon finding the monument, and after Jacques uses the bronze mirror to acquire Enja, the three meet up and reach Enryaku Temple. They are met by Ranmaru, who, while still calling Jacques a Western barbarian, focuses his mockery towards Nobutada for his clan's failings and now associating with the Oni. Nobutada makes clear his distaste for both the Oda and Hiro clans, vocally disavowing all aspects of his family, something that catches Jacques' attention. Ranmaru regardless summons Marcellus to face them and is chased by Samanosuke, leaving both Jacques and Nobutada to face Marcellus. With both working together, Marcellus is beaten far more easily, though Jacques is still fairly exhausted due to his lack of experience fighting Genma. Akko still heads back to reassure Henri, and while they both rest in Enryaku Temple in the meantime, Jacques questions why Nobutada separated from Nobuhiro and the Genma. Nobutada corrects Jacques, telling him that Nobuhiro's and Hideyoshi's endless ambitions led both to seek out the Genma for power, leaving him resentful towards both sides as well as hateful towards the Genma. As a result, Jacques backs down, though remains a bit cautious just in case. After Samanosuke and Michelle escape the sewers, meet up with Henri, and rest while Akko returns to Jacques and Nobutada, the two agree to begin moving on, with Nobutada suggesting meeting back up with Samanosuke to discuss their next move, but both begin noticing the beeping within the crate. While Nobutada is confused as to what the devices are, he recognises the stamp of the Toreya merchant from Sakai, and agrees with Jacques that that should be their next destination. Samanosuke returns as they're about to leave, and he leaves with them after they catch him up. The three Oni split up after they reach Sakai, with Nobutada checking the back roads while Jacques visits the merchant directly due to his familiarity with the watch. The merchant remains tight-lipped, and Jacques is later forced to sneak in through the open window, overhearing the merchant's conversation. Jacques later finds Guildenstern's time-lab journal, and both Samanosuke and Nobutada meet up with him to discuss the western ship. Jacques shows them the journal, and as Akko explains who Guildenstern is, Nobutada reinforces the fact that Samanosuke has dealt with him in the past. They all agree to find the ship and are confronted by Heihachi, who takes notice of Nobutada immediately and challenges him specifically to a duel. Akko explains who Heihachi is, and that Ieyasu Tokugawa allied with Nobuhiro, and the other two join in the fight after the ship starts moving. With all three fighting, Heihachi is completely overpowered and he retreats, promising to win next time. And like normal, Jacques gets the key to his bike from Henri and gets onto the ship alone. From here on, Jacques' story remains almost entirely unchanged for the majority of the game now. After Jacques reaches the ship, Heihachi approaches Samanosuke and Nobutada and apologises for attacking them, giving the same reason of wanting to test their strength. However, they are interrupted by the Toreya merchant who reports of the Genma's continuing attack. Samanosuke and Nobutada agree to hold them back on the drawbridge while Heihachi secures the necessary materials to repair it. This plays out normally until the town is secured and the drawbridge is raised. As Heihachi attempts to leave, Samanosuke stops him, reminding him of Tokugawa's alliance with Nobuhiro, meaning his opposition of the Genma is equivalent to treason. Heihachi hesitates to answer for a moment, and Nobutada begins to speak up, reminding Heihachi that based on their previous duel, he clearly knows that Nobutada is Nobuhiro's #1 public enemy, so fighting alongside him would risk jeopardizing Tokugawa's alliance entirely by letting Nobutada live. Heihachi remains tight-lipped and quickly bids them both farewell. Jacques and future Samanosuke get through the undersea temple in the same way as before, with Jacques defeating Gertrude and escaping on the Genma train, and Samanosuke being captured by Genma Ranmaru, leading to Michelle saving him and Henri, and Samanosuke defeating Guildenstern. In fact, things remain the same until Jacques manages to escape Mont Saint-Michel and arrives in Lake Biwa. Samanosuke, Nobutada and Heihachi are led by Akko to Jacques after he fell from the flying fortress, and Heihachi apologised for his antagonism, feeling forced to side with the Genma because of his allegiance to Tokugawa. He further elaborates that said alliance between Ieyasu and Nobuhiro requires that Nobutada is to be hunted down and destroyed by any means necessary, but upon meeting him and realising the honourable man he is, this proved to be a bridge too far, and the final straw before finally abandoning both his lord and the Genma. This only further builds respect between Jacques and Nobutada, now certain that his relation to Nobuhiro is truly meaningless. The party agree to find the Oni army orb, and Heihachi is sent to Azuchi Castle while the three Oni search for the orb. Jacques and Nobutada are both locked inside the mansion rather than only Jacques, and while Samanosuke tries to find another way in, the other two Oni work together to make it through the mansion's traps. They quickly reach the altar and find the orb, with Samanosuke arriving soon after, and the group leaves for Azuchi Castle. When they arrive, Samanosuke is about to use the orb, but Jacques instead suggests that Nobutada be the one to maintain the army as a sign of trust. Moved by Jacques' gesture, Nobutada places the orb in his gauntlet and releases the army, sending it forward towards the Genma, Samanosuke and Jacques following. With both Jacques and Samanosuke involved in the fight, the Genma forces are completely steamrolled even faster than usual, and both reach the castle before Heihachi has the chance to kill the Genma inside, leading to the three of them defeating them together. Heihachi learns that Nobutada is the one to stay behind to control the army, but expects him to join them soon once the last of the Genma are wiped out. Ranmaru appears at this point and is this time a little more angry, specifically at Heihachi for not only betraying Nobuhiro, but willingly allowing Nobutada to live instead of obeying their kill order on him. Heihachi responds by promising to take Nobuhiro's head, and Ranmaru challenges him to try before walking away. Heihachi chases him down, telling the two Oni to find Nobuhiro at the top of the castle, and Samanosuke takes a moment to remind Heihachi how cunning Ranmaru can be before they part. Naturally, with both Samanosuke and Jacques present, all threats on the climb up are rendered powerless, including the revived Marcellus, and they reach the throne room to confront Vega Donna. She's even more annoyed this time at the presence of two Onis rather than just one, and attacks them. Their teamwork completely overshadow her speed and trickery, easily defeating the Genma Queen. As she shrivels away, Nobutada arrives, the Genma army already obliterated by the Oni army, and the three of them climb the set of stairs that drop, only to find Heihachi mortally wounded by Ranmaru's trap. He takes a moment to tell them that Nobuhiro is in Honnoji Temple, and as he begs them to destroy him, uses his last breath to thank Nobutada for helping him finally break free of his ties to the Genma. A moment of silence is given in respect to his death, and they leave to head to Honnoji Temple while Akko goes back to the future. The Eiffel Tower portion once again remains the same, and after Ranmaru activates the time folder, Akko rejoins the three Oni in the past as they assault the temple. Inside, when Ranmaru attempts to stop them, Jacques initially attempts to face him, but Nobutada asks him to step back, wanting to face Ranmaru himself. Jacques, while wanting to avenge Heihachi, understands that Nobutada had built his own connection to the late spearman, on top of his self-appointed responsibility to stop his uncle's rampage. Ranmaru immediately charges towards Nobutada as the other two Oni back away, but Nobutada proves far too skillful, outpacing and overpowering Ranmaru at every turn. After a short scuffle, Nobutada cuts Ranmaru down, leaving his body at the base of the temple's stairs. With Ranmaru dead, the three of them enter the temple to confront Nobuhiro. Nobuhiro reacts with significant anger, especially upon seeing Nobutada, immediately attacking the group with his magic. Nobutada pushes Jacques out of the way as he takes a hit from the magic, and Samanosuke charges in to fight, but is quickly incapacitated as Jacques is helping Nobutada to his feet. The two are left to face Nobuhiro alone, who primarily targets Nobutada. While fighting, however, his blind anger towards his nephew leaves himself open to Jacques' attacks on more than one occasion, something the two begin to take advantage of, and while Nobuhiro does catch on and adapt, it becomes evident that fighting the both of them at the same time is a losing battle, and he is eventually defeated by their combined might, with Nobutada in particular feeling a large sense of pride over finally defeating his bloodthirsty uncle. As Samanosuke regains consciousness and Jacques bids farewell to both Oni, Nobuhiro gets up and flies into a rage, incapacitating both Samanosuke and Nobutada. As Jacques is sent to his own time, Nobuhiro kills Samanosuke, deciding to want to torture his nephew first as punishment for his constant opposition, as well as once again calling him the embodiment of his father's failings. Nobutada rebukes, saying that he has no care for his father Nobunaga, and that his father's failings are his alone, not Nobutada's. Once again their battle begins, and while Jacques and Samanosuke in the future say their farewells, Nobutada is slowly worn down by Nobuhiro, until eventually he is left lying on the ground, barely alive. As Samanosuke arrives back into his own time, Nobuhiro finally kills his nephew after driving his sword into his chest. As he is maniacally cackling, elated that his greatest enemy is finally dead, Samanosuke arrives to confront him, much to his shock and frustration. With this, Samanosuke absorbs the power from his other self and becomes a true Onimusha, leading to the same final battle as usual, eventually leading to Nobuhiro transforming and finally being defeated. Instead of finally accepting defeat like Nobunaga, he begins angrily ranting about the constant obstacles that stopped him from taking his rightful place as the ruler of both the Oda clan and the entire country, cursing his nephew as well as his half-brother, blaming his failings on them as well. As Nobuhiro continues ranting, Samanosuke takes the chance to seal Nobuhiro away within his gauntlet forever. While satisfied at keeping his promise to Jacques and the Oni, Samanosuke takes the time to remember Nobutada, hoping that he would be satisfied at his uncle's final undignified defeat. As the temple begins to fall apart, Samanosuke takes Nobutada's body and flees, hoping to give him a proper ceremony. Meanwhile, after arriving back from his battle with the Hiro clan, Hideyoshi learns not only of Nobuhiro's death, but also Nobutada's betrayal, finally disavowing the young Oda and deciding that he will carry Nobunaga's will himself, noticing the opportunity to seize power himself with both Nobuhiro and Nobutada dead. After Mitsuhide is killed in the Battle of Yamazaki by Hideyoshi, Samanosuke constructs the Akechi tomb in honour of him in Kyoto, also having a second monument and grave ready for Nobutada, wanting him to be remembered as the Oda who worked to break the cycle of violent conquest that his family became synonymous with. With both Nobutada and Nobuhiro dead, events realign for the last time and everything remains consistent from here on out. So this is a good place to stop. So what do you think? Given Nobunaga's confidence in his abilities, it seemed reasonable to believe that he may have refused to accept the Genma's deal in Warlords, preferring to defeat his enemies with his own strength, as if to prove that he was always strong enough to do so. This also gave me a chance to look more into the Oda family, which led me to find some interesting things that I thought would really work for this scenario. Nobuhiro's lack of received respect due to his illegitimacy was in fact a real factor in his life despite being older than Nobunaga, and he was eventually forced to step down to allow Nobunaga to rule as a result once his power faded. As for Nobutada, what is interesting is that historically, he is known to have been killed after fleeing Honnoji Temple following his father's death. So it seemed odd that Nobutada never even showed up in any capacity, not even as an enemy defending his father in Demon Siege. With his actual history in mind, I thought it felt appropriate to die fighting his uncle in this case. I can't deny, I enjoyed writing the conflict between both factions of the Oda clan, including what I decided to name the Oda Civil War. But before I keep rambling, I'll let you guys go. I hope you all enjoyed this scenario, and if you have any ideas, send them my way. I've really come to enjoy writing them. Take care everyone, until next time, Danish out.